What up? I'm gonna teach you how to play Knuckles. I'm gonna go over PAs real quick. Normal attack. Normal attack is basically just like any other weapon. 3 hits. Your third hit's gonna deal the most amount of damage, and it's gonna recover you the most amount of PP. Weapon action lets you dodge in place. I like to mention that a certain weapon has a certain potential that allows you to counterattack with a giant fist that deals really good amount of damage. In the nearby future, well, I'm not sure in the nearby future, sometime in the future, this is gonna be like an S augment that you can place in any weapon with what is it called, a 4 slot or whatever, that can support S4s. So that's something to keep in mind in the future. Overhand straight. Overhand straight is pretty good. It provides a good amount of iframes, or invincibility if you don't know what that means. It's also really cheap. Your cheapest PA, in fact. And it deals okay damage. When I mean okay damage, I mean, yes, the damage is good. But the problem is the move is kind of slow. But because it's slow, you get a good chunk of invincibility. Flicker jab. Flicker jab is really fast. It's really cheap too. And it's what you use to start a combo most of the time, or ideally. I know I don't use this all the time, but it's ideally great for combo starting. But here's the problem. Its damage is really bad. It's so bad that if you overuse this, your DPS will drop significantly. So keep that in mind. Just use this sparingly whenever you're trying to start a combo, and make sure you don't like... I'll explain it more in depth as we go over the other PAs. You'll see what I mean. Pendulum combo. This has a 3-hit move. Each wind-up for each hit provides invincibility, and each hit deals really good amount of damage. Personally, it's a pretty good... it's very similar to overhand straight, as it provides a good amount of invincibility, but it does more damage, but there's one drawback. You're not as safe. What I mean by that, remember how I mentioned you get invincibility only during the wind-up for each punch? Well, once you're in that punching stage, like you actually hit the enemy, you don't have invincibility, which means you can get interrupted. However, you're quickly put back in that invincibility state when you're winding up for the next punch. Sorry if it sounds confusing. I'll show you in game later what I mean, and perhaps visual demonstration will satisfy you. Sliding uppercut. Sliding uppercut is pretty good for setup whenever an enemy is about to spawn in, or if they got like invincibility and you're just waiting for that invincibility to wear off. This is pretty good for that. But I honestly don't really use it all that often outside of that case. Advancing charge. Advancing charge is really good if there's a bunch of mobs grouped up in a very clustered spot. You can get pretty decent damage out of it, but I don't really see much use out of it aside from that. Quake Stomp is going to be your AoE. It's going to be great against mobs, regardless if they're scattered or close by. Though its AoE range isn't as wide as other AoEs in this game. It's your only form of AoE. Well, I wouldn't say only form of AoE, but it's your only reliable AoE move for Knuckles. There's also some weird thing I'll go over with regarding Knuckles' pursuit ring with Quick Stomp. But just know in mind, this is basically where you're going to use against mobs a lot. Non-pulsing Knuckle. Non-pulsing Knuckle is pretty good. PA allows you to travel in between each hits. It's very similar to Pendulum combo without the invincibility. But in exchange for that invincibility, like I said, you move toward the target each individual hit. Excuse me. Let me look at my notes real quick. I lost train of thought. Also deals really good damage if I haven't mentioned that before. I'll go over it a little bit more in depth, this and Pendulum combo, in a moment. Burst Infinity. Burst Infinity is really good. It's one of your highest damaging PAs. Once you get the full animation done. It's gonna be used for your combos a lot. Same with Decimator, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Has a really wide hitbox than it actually looks. So you don't have to like worry if it's out of range, because it's got a pretty decent hitbox. Or range, if you don't know what hitbox is. Hitbox is like the area where hits connect. Decimator. Decimator is going to be your main source of damage. Deals really high amounts of damage really quickly. But the drawback is it's 40 PP cost. It's very expensive. So what you usually want to do is you usually want to use a different PA and then combo into Decimator, because you got that skill tree bonus. You know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll go over it later, probably. Meteor Fist. Meteor Fist, it's not really good. It relies too heavily on RNG, because there's a chance you might get just a single really weak fist, or a multi-fist, which is decent, I guess, or a huge powerful fist. It's just completely random. Of course, if you charge it all the way, you have a chance at that giant fist. Otherwise, you wouldn't. By the way, the whole counterattack thing I mentioned before, that giant fist is identical to the giant fist you get from Meteor Fist when you fully charge it. Heartless Impact. This is going to be your movement PA, and a really good PA to close the distance between you and your target, in ground and in midair. Especially in midair. Knuckles isn't as bad as you think in midair. I'll go over why later. But with this PA, you're able to close the distance pretty well. Alright, so that's it for PAs. I want to go over rings real quick. You definitely want to get Knuckles Pursuit. It changes the properties of your PAs when you're locked on the enemy and while grounded. As the description reads, you approach your enemy whenever you use a PA. So you move slightly more toward the enemy. This helps out a lot more than you think. It also changes one weird property with Quake Stomp. And that is, if you use this in mid-air, Quake Stomp in mid-air while locked on the enemy with this ring equipped, you'll actually kind of leap toward them. That's pretty good, actually. I'll explain why soon. Fighter Valor Emblem. Sorry if I'm pretty bad at pronouncing things. This boosts your crit rate, your crit damage, and reduces the damage you've taken. It is a really good ring to have for fighter, since they can utilize crit really well. So, and finally, the last ring is Leaping Dodge. Leaping Dodge is pretty good, as it gives you a massive height. This allows you to reach the enemies that are really high up in the air. Like, for instance, the dragon, or the dragon from that one Dragon Urgent. Excuse me if I can't remember the exact name. Sometimes have weak points on their wings. And normally you wouldn't be able to reach that high without a Leaping Dodge ring. With Leaping Dodge, you're able to jump really high and reach up to that spot. So I highly recommend having Leaping Dodge. Every other ring is optional. Well, it's just down to personal taste. I like having Party Roughnecks. I like having Atomizer Lovers. Pretty good rings, in my personal opinion. But you could go with anything else. They're pretty good. What else? Where are my notes? Combos. Alright, let's get to the main part of this video. Combos. Now, comboing as Knuckles fighter isn't as hard as you may think. It usually revolves around a combo starter, such as Flicker Jab, into Burst Infinity, into Decimator, and then loop back between Burst Infinity and Decimator. That's going to be one of your most powerful combos in this game. It deals really good amount of damage. You don't have to worry about PP cost as much if you have a lot of PP like I do. Like, I can throw out a couple of these loops. That's 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops, almost 4 loops. Really good. But that's if you got, like, your PP full. Which, your PP recovery, I like to mention, isn't that great. And you may be wondering, oh, can I just do something like Flicker Jab, Decimator, 3rd hit, and then Burst Infinity, Decimator, 3rd hit for PP recovery? You can, but I wouldn't really advise it because your natural PP recovery per hit isn't as great as you may think. But it does get improved upon by a lot while you're in the overload state. I'll show you that real quick. As you see, each hit's giving me a lot of PP while in overload. So your main source to recover PP is going to be in your overload state, which you're going to be in for like 66% of the time if you got it maxed out. But I'm getting sidetracked here. We're talking about combos. My bad. Alright. So, like I mentioned before, Flicker Jab, Burst Infinity, Decimator is going to be your main to-go damage. Except you don't want to use Flicker Jab after Decimator. You just want to keep looping between those 2 PAs I mentioned. However, you can substitute Burst Infinity for Pendulum combo or non-pulsing Knuckle. And the reason why you might want to do that, even though it's a drop of DPS, you're losing out DPS, but not by a whole much. Because non-pulsing Knuckle and Pendulum still does pretty good amount of damage. So the reason why you may want to use those PAs over Burst Infinity at times, or even Decimator, is either Pendulum combo if the enemy is doing some multi-hit attack, or you're going to be hit and you're not confident in just regular dodging, because there will be times where you might be afraid to normal dodge and fail because the timing is kind of short, very strict. But with Pendulum, you get like good amount of iframes. Now you could also use the what's it called, like overhead, I believe. Sorry, yeah, overhand. My bad, not overhead. Overhand's straight instead of Pendulum combo, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine to use. It's really cheap, like I mentioned before. But personally, I prefer this over overhand for damage. Non-pulsing Knuckle you may want to use mostly while you're grounded. It's not that great while you're in mid-air because it doesn't travel at all. In fact, most of your PAs will not travel at all. You may want to you only really use if the enemy is grounded and they're moving around quite a lot, as it allows you to travel. I can't really demonstrate you with this rock bear, but I'll probably like upload a clip at the end of the video of what I mean by that. But it's pretty good against like mobile targets that aren't moving far away. If they're moving far away, you probably might want to do Heartless Impact into Decimator. That's pretty good for gaining distance, long range distance. But for short range distance, non-pulsing Knuckle into Decimator will work just fine. There will be times where your Decimator may not be a really good viable option, and the reasoning for this is because Decimator has a very small hitbox and a very weird one at that too. You have to be like right up in front of them. During that time, you may want to substitute Decimator for either non-pulsing Knuckle or Pendulum combo. Sorry about that. I got sidetracked with the urgent. Oh, let me look at my notes real quick. Alright, sorry about that. Just looking. Alright, fighting in midair. Let's talk about fighting in midair. As you see, Knuckles is more of a grounded class, and your gear resets upon just jumping. You lose gear when you jump, but to be honest, you lose gear regardless really quickly, but you gain it back so quickly. So don't worry about fighting in mid-air, because you're still pretty good. The only issue here is that you're gonna be standing in place, but with Heartless Impact, like I mentioned before, you can draw the distance between you and your target. You also may want to get used to the lock-on, because you're going to be locking on a lot during fighter. The only times you won't lock on is probably when there's a huge crowd of smaller enemies and you're just doing some Quake stomps real quickly. But whenever you're fighting like a singular enemy or boss or whatnot, you definitely want to lock on. Let's go over the weird Quake Stomp properties I mentioned before. As you can see, I just Quake Stomp in midair. I do like a leap toward them, rather than just doing it in place if I don't have the lock on. This doesn't apply when you're grounded, only when you're in midair. It's kind of weird. The ring doesn't tell you that, but there is some practicality use for doing this. And the reasoning behind this is if you want to quickly gain distance while in midair, if you're already in midair and you want to quickly gain distance and you want to be grounded, this is pretty good for that. It's a really good transitioning from air to ground. And that's about it, really, right? I think I went over all my notes. My last note says, "Don't stress over dying." The reason why I said that, is because Knuckles can be kind of very difficult. Even though combo-wise, honestly, I don't think comboing is all that difficult. You're mostly gonna be doing just Flicker, Burst Infinity, Decimator, and then loop back, like I mentioned before. Occasionally throw out these. Don't stress about dying, because that's just a process of playing fighter. You're always going to be at low health. You're always going to be at death's door. Iron will never fucking trigger. Don't worry about it too much. And I'm probably going to do a jump cut to classes, I guess. Like class trees. Show you real quick the class trees and stuff like that. So let me do that real quick. Alright, I'm going to show you the skill tree. It's nothing too special. Though you may want to notice Overload Safeguard. I don't have that, and I would not recommend taking it. The reasoning for this is because it will extend the cooldown of your overload when it triggers, and that's not a good thing because you always want to be in your overload, since overload is how you get your damage, like your big damage. And this just stalls and delays your overload if it triggers, that is. And there really isn't anything too special about this build. It's your basic run-of-the-mill fighter skill tree. Now, Hunter's sub is pretty okay. Well, it's the best option right now, but as we get more classes later on, I believe a toy, or however you pronounce that, is going to be a really good sub for fighter. Knuckles. And I checked that out a little bit, and it seemed to be really good. Really good. I might actually switch over to that subclass for my fighter. But, of course, it's not out, and I can't test it out if it really is really amazing. But I can speculate. The other two classes, Phantom and Luster, seems kind of promising, but not so much, maybe. I only looked at it a bit on the skill simulator, and it seems it could be alternatives, but honestly, a toy sub seems to be really good for fighter. That's my honest opinion. But until we get that, we're just gonna have to stick with fighter sub. You could go with something a little bit more of a gimmick. I'm not sure what other alternative for subbing would be. I heard Summoner, but I'm not too sure, honestly. But with Hunter sub, I would definitely not recommend Automates. Automates is kind of a waste since you're always going to be in overload. This isn't really going to help you out much. And plus you get your damage bonuses from being at low health. So I will avoid Automates. Hunter Physique, you could go for a Hunter Physique. But honestly for me, it's too many points. It's like 6, 11 points. It's not that great for my honest opinion. For a fighter sub, I mean main, nah, not really. I mean you could go for it. It's damage reduction and immunity to knockback. So it's not bad per se, but I would honestly rather just dump the extra points into melee powers, because they provide a pretty good amount of melee power, even though you usually don't want to go for like stat increases because they're usually really low. But these ones provide a decent amount, my honest opinion. Of course you want to max Iron Will. That's an absolute must. Critical Fury is an absolute must. Stalwart Spirit is pretty good. It increases your invincibility when it does when your Iron Will triggers. So, and boosts your melee power by 300. That's really good. And really, that's about it. It's just a basic run-of-the-mill build. Feel free to copy it if you like. So. Quick, some things I haven't gone over. Burst Infinity has guard frames on startup. Let me show you what I mean. So, yeah, I failed. It's kind of hard. Not sure if I can actually immediately reset him. Yo, reset it, please. So what I mean by this is when you use Burst Infinity at the very start of right as you're about to get hit. God damn it. I can't show you it properly. It happens at times, and you might be weirded out if you do get hit and you're like, what? It's a block? Yes. Yeah, you can actually block with this. It's not viable at all. It's not something you rely upon, but it's possible. I see it occasionally, not too often. Another thing you want to note. Let's change this to free real quick. Stationary. Is for an easy way to travel without using PP, you want to lock on, and of course with your Knuckles Pursuit Ring, you want to dash forward and attack. Do a dashing attack, essentially. Well, yeah. Sidestep attack, my bad. It travels a good amount of distance. Like, look at that distance. Really good distance. And you don't have to use PP. That's really good. I like to use this at times. Really good option rather than just Heartless Impact. And then, you know. It kind of works in midair, but not... Yeah. It puts you down in the ground, though. And I guess you could use this as an alternative to Quake Stomp. But the thing with Quake Stomp is that because this is a PA, you can combo into another PA and get that PA damage bonus. You do still get a damage bonus if you do use normal attacks into other PAs. For instance, let's use Burst. Not Burst. Let's use Decimator. That's not a crit. That's a crit. That's almost 200k damage. But if I normal attack and then burst, I mean Decimator, my bad. That's an extra like what 40k damage. Now if I use a PA, that's an extra 20,000. So that's something to keep in mind. You can just do a normal attack and then start your looping combos, like boom, Burst Infinity, Decimator, and whatnot. You could do that. There's no issue because I'm gonna be honest. Flicker Jab for me, I do use it, but not a whole lot because I have a bad habit of just going straight for a burst infinity. So if you're that kind of guy, you can just do a normal attack and then burst infinity instead of flicker jab. It's gonna be costly though, since well, is it? Hold up, I actually don't know if the bonus PP reduction applies to normal attacks. So let's try Decimator. Decimator's 30, so it puts me at 144. Let's get some PP back. Okay, 144, and then if I do normal attack, boom. Okay, so yeah, PP reduction bonus does not count toward normal attacks. That's something to keep in mind. That's about it. I might show off gameplay clips of just basic run-of-the-mill fighter. I may even provide commentary, or probably just put like extra text for like tips and whatnot that occurs in. But yeah, thanks for watching then. If you got any questions or whatnot, or I actually have a question for anyone who can answer this. Does Iron Will take priority over Safeguard, or does Safeguard takes priority over Iron Will? If you can answer that, feel free to. Even though if the answer is Iron Will takes priority over Safeguard, I still wouldn't recommend Safeguard. I still would not recommend Safeguard.